Hello and welcome to the shed. In today's video I wanted to show you an old school way of clamping boards together without clamps. Hope you enjoy. So this technique involves using your workbench, or you can actually use another board if your workbench is not flat enough. Since I've just flattened mine, I know my workbench is flat enough to reference for this, and so we're going to jump down here and I'm going to show you exactly how we go about doing this. And we're going to make a little project along the way. So what we're looking at here is a piece of pine, and I've got these couple of bits of Tasmanian oak that we're going to edge glue onto the side here. First of all, what you want to do is actually make sure you have square edges on your pieces and that they're all square to one face. In my case, this side is out a little bit, so we're just going to square that side up to this face. So now we've got that edge square to this side, we can then use that to reference these two long edges. The other advantage you have in this is it actually squares it all up as well, which is nice. And you're just waiting to hear for a full length shaving like we just got there. We can put our shooting board to the side for now, and we just need our workbench. So we know it's going to go this way, we know which way up these pieces are going, and that they're going to make a nice clean joint onto here. And what we're going to be making here is a chopping board that's got a couple of accents using the Tasmanian oak on the side of a piece of pine. So now we need to look at what we're going to do to clamp this. So I'm going to use bench dogs. You can use whatever you've got that actually fits on your bench. Now I need to turn this around this way just so it spans the gap a little bit better from using this longer side. And you'll see why in a minute. Now I'm going to set a backer piece in here. And you can use dogs, you can use more dogs on this side. I'm just going to use holdfast because all they're doing is stopping the workpiece from moving, and so you can use the dogs or not, it doesn't really matter. And so what you can see we're going to do here is use these wedge systems to lock it in place. Now you can also put a backer piece on this side if you want, but what you need to make sure is whatever you're clamping, that your wedges are long enough to support along the side of it, otherwise you will need a backer piece to get in there to allow these wedges to work. Now you can see here as I pull this that is probably going to come tight enough, so I don't need a backer piece in there, but if it was a little loose you could have a backer piece in here. And the other thing you can do quite wide boards glued up in this fashion, and you can actually just put backer pieces to allow it, but it works better for these smaller pieces that you have a little more control over. So some of you are probably thinking, well, that'll stick to your workbench. Well, what we're going to do is use some greaseproof paper or baking paper, and because it's shiny and glossy, the glue won't stick to it, and so we're going to lay that underneath it before we glue. So what we're going to do is just fit this in here, and you can see that that's going to fill in here quite nicely and protect the entire piece. Now you could use something thin like MDF or something like that that's got some packing tape on it, that would work. Anything that works to stop epoxy sticking, you could use that. You could put tape straight onto your bench if you really wanted to. But I like the baking paper because it's inexpensive and you can just pull it out for whatever size you require. So that's what I do. Perhaps you guys do it some way different if you do something like this. So let us know in the comments below if you would use something different to stop it sticking. I'm going to be using Titebond 2 since this is supposed to be a chopping board. Titebond 2 is rated for chopping boards with indirect food contact, so that's what we're going to be using here. So let's get a bead of glue on this and we'll get this locked together. So in order to do this, I'm just going to put the glue on the pine, and just, you don't want too much glue. A thin bead in the middle is good, and then I'm just going to flip it over while I've got it here, do the same, you really don't want too much glue there. And so now I'm going to line it up, rock that piece back and forwards, line this one up, rock it back and forwards. Now, keep my fingers clean. And now what we want to do is slowly work these wedges so the pieces don't move. And then you want to alternate tap these until they apply the pressure you want. You can also tap your workpieces, and you just want to ensure that this is going to pull up nice and tight. Because PVA is soluble in water, just get a wet rag and we're going to wipe that excess off. That saves us having to clean it up later on. Using a process like this, because you have limited cleanup options when it's clamped down like this, you are going to have to do some face planing afterwards, which you should always factor into your projects anyway to do a nice final smoothing pass or something like that to it. Maybe sound off in the comments about how you guys remove glue squeeze out in a situation like this. One thing I forgot to mention when you're doing these is to just make sure as you're clamping them that all of these pieces are seated down like they should be, so they're all the way down, because sometimes when you do these wedges up they can slide and bulge up a little bit. In my case, I can see just by looking along here at the bench that they're actually down flat, so I don't have to worry too much, but that's just another thing to check. So now that this is all good to go, I've checked it, it's all there, it's going to be fine. I've got to let it dry, so I'll be back with you once it's dried so we can finish off this little project. So if we look here, we can see that it didn't really stick to it at all, and it comes straight off with the paper. So now we've got to actually just cut these off. We will have to plane them flat as well, so we're going to cut them off first. And we're going to move to the top and get a nice face plane going on here. So this plane's not being the most compliant. I've got a little bit more tear out here again, and so the only way to really get rid of that is to sand that out, I think. So let's make ourselves up just a little sanding block to do this. Some double-sided tape. I'm just going to put some 120 on here to start with. The beauty of this is if it wears out you can just peel it off and put another piece on. And as always, go with the grain. You tell me, do I need to do any more than the 120 grit sandpaper on this? Some of you out there use sandpaper a lot more than I do. I just use it sparingly here and there where I require it. So maybe some of you out there use power tools and sand a lot. What do you recommend for an oil finish? What grit would you actually go to on some pine with a little bit of Tasmanian oak on the sides? Just wipe a little bit of excess off. So there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this way of clamping work up, and it's by no means a new method using wedges. In actual fact, it probably goes back to the earliest way of wedging or clamping something, and I think we can have a benefit of that in our workshops, particularly when working on small pieces such as this here, which is about 200mm wide, 300 long. It's about the perfect size for wedging up something on your workbench or on an additional jig if you wanted to. And I think there's no limit to the size you could really go to using this technique. There would just be a lot more fiddling around and working to get it to actually set up and keep everything in alignment. And I hope you also benefited from having a bonus little project here so you could see how it functioned, and you can make something very basic or even more complicated. Really, this glue up method can be used to laminate boards of varying widths. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing down below. And while you're down there, please sound off in the comments. Have you used this technique before? Are you considering using this technique? And if you'd like to support me a little bit further, please consider checking me out on Instagram and also on Patreon. And if you'd like to see another great video such as this one here, please check out the video up here where I make this great little awl. And I'm also going to put the playlist to all my other build videos over here. Bye for now.